Hello everyone, I'm Matthew from the California Commanders blog. I am here with Giles Poitras. Alright. Make sure we get that right. Yeah, but like I said, we've been having a debate for the last 8 years. So my first question is, the last time we spoke, which was 2011, we were in what we call the Moe era.
Yes.
Since then, the phenomenon has died down, but we still get elements of Moe to this very day. Now we're in the middle of what we call the Isekai era, where it's just every other anime is a story about somebody
stuck in another world.
Whether you're a mom or someone who got hit by a truck or a combination of both.
Or just stepped into a portal.
Video game, everything. So my question is, what will be the lasting legacy of isekai anime? Will we have isekai anime the same way we have moe anime?
Yeah, I think both will continue. And the better titles will continue to get recognition. Because, for example, a classic isekai anime is El Hazard, which came out a long time ago. And then today you've got various other shows, most of which I look at the first 3 episodes and that's it. You know, some of which, like Gate, I really enjoy because they take all these incredible cliches and don't do them the same way. You know, they present it differently. So some shows will survive, some shows will just become part of the historical mix, and that's it. And the same thing with the moe things, you know. There's some shows which will really hold on, and some shows won't. You know, Cardcaptor Sakura,
that was
such a gem.
That was a good one too,
And that will continue to be held up.
So in a way, what I'm also looking at too is when isekai, you know, when the isekai wave dies down and like new anime start coming out, are we going to see elements of isekai in the same way we saw elements of moe, but maybe mixed in with like martial arts or space or like an opera, for example?
Could be. The potential for mixing different tropes and concepts, it goes all over the place. So, you know, well, Gate for the example. It's classic military otaku fare with all the great hardware. But you've also got this other world with wizards and fairies and elves, and you've got the empire with its army, which is Roman based, and it's, you know, Roman political structure and all of the conflicts and everything going in there. So you got political intrigue. So you've got quite a mix in that. You know, so having shows that take different motifs and put them together in different combinations will continue. And you'll have some that will break the mold. And then there, of course, I'm always looking forward to shows that don't follow into the main structure of what's been coming out and are different. So one of my favorites in the past few years was Showa Genroku Rakugo, about Rakugo storytellers. No moe, no isekai, none of that, but a very different world. The world of real life professional storytellers in Japan. And right now, part of my excitement is I'm seeing such a variety of shows coming out, you know, that it's no longer dominated as much by one genre. Isekai is a big thing now, but there's a lot more. Whereas in the moe period, it seemed that almost everything was coming out, was aimed at that demographic of fandom.
So you wrote the book, The Anime Companion. What was the initial reception to that book when it first came out?
It sold surprisingly well. The publisher and I had estimated there might be a market of 8,000 people. It went beyond that right away. First printing sold very rapidly, went second printing, third printing, fourth printing, and eventually I did the second volume. You know, eventually I will do a second edition, which will currently, I have a web supplement on my website that's got 750 new entries that are not in either Anime Companion or Anime Companion 2. So I've got the material. I want to rewrite everything and add several hundred more new entries before I do a new edition.
Of course.
So maybe in a few more years that will be able to. I've talked to my publisher about the next book. I've got 2 possibilities lined up because I'm about to hand him in a few weeks a manuscript for a book I've been working on for the past couple years, that's not anime related, but Japan related. And then I want to do second editions of the other books.
Okay, good.
But which one goes first, we haven't decided yet.
Oh, okay. So that's like a big toss-up for you. Which one will actually pop up first? Which one will get more popular and all that stuff, right? Yeah.
My next question is, if we took a snapshot of the current anime market in both the United States and Japan, there are some big discrepancies, major miscommunications, and missed opportunities. For example, the prices of Blu-rays, or the lack of dual language releases in real time with today's technology. So for example, Code Geass Elusive the Resurrection just came out in the US in May, but in Japan, it was out in February.
Yeah.
If we had our way, we would have simultaneous worldwide releases of Resurrection in February in both English and Japanese, but we haven't had that. If we could really dig into the roots of why that is, what would that be?
I think a big factor is money. Money in the sense that if you're going to be releasing a movie internationally simultaneously, that's easy to do if you're just subtitling. But if you're going to do a redub and you want to do a good job, that's a ton of money. You know, so, and that's got to be put up front. You have, the American licensor has to pay a large amount of money to the Japanese company, and then they have to pay a significant amount of money for studio time, for the actors, and all of the other things. So that, and then it takes, you got all the editing and everything else, that takes a few months. So simultaneous would be very difficult because they would have to have a crew of actors ready to do the roles on very short notices, because between the time the movie is completed in Japan and the time it's in the movie theaters in Japan is not that long. You know, so doing a simultaneous release would be more difficult. TV shows are easier because you know you've got a schedule, you've got the script right at the beginning, you know, you can work on that. But a movie gets a little bit more tricky.
And then also too, look at the prices of Blu-rays. Like for example, in the US, you can get a decent 13 episode series for about $100 to $150. But in Japan, that same price is for 2 episodes. Why is that? Well,
in Japan, the big market for any video release is the rental shops. People still rent the stuff in Japan. Face it, a lot of Japanese, they don't want to have a big collection of stuff, but they want to see it. So they want to be able to just go down to their neighborhood rental shop and rent the thing. So you can find an incredible amount of stuff in these shops. Where I stay in Asakusa when I'm in Tokyo, and there's like a huge store, gigantic store, that is rental, not only for movies and anime, but also for music. You can rent music CDs in Japan.
Oh, that's interesting.
And, you know, it's like a great thing.
It's interesting too, because like you don't expect to see like music rental stores.
Yeah.
Like you always, like right here, you get to purchase them, you don't rent them. You like buy the CD, you buy the song. And in Japan, hearing this was actually surprising to me.
And even, some of these places even rent manga.
Well, libraries, well,
you can rent the manga, take it home and read it, you know. There are manga cafes, of course, where you can read it in the cafe and stuff. So that's a big thing because they release it, you know, first. Later on, the later printings may actually be cheaper. So, for example, when Wild 7 live-action movie came out in Japan, I was really excited because I loved the original OVA series and what tiny bit of the manga we got in English a long time ago. And so I talked to a friend of mine in Japan, and I said, how is the movie? He said, it's very good. And it was released on subtitled DVD, but it was like $65 for a DVD, Region 2 DVD. And I kept hemming and hawing, you know, and stuff, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then it went out of print. I said, okay, I'll keep checking. Came back in print. You can get the Blu-ray for $12. From Japan.
From Japan? Well,
yes.
$12.
$12.
That's interesting.
Yeah, for a gorgeous action film.
Wow.
You know, apparently it was so successful they dropped the price that low.
Okay, but that's interesting.
That's really exceptional.
Yeah, exactly. Like having it very low price. Like usually you see like movies around like $20, $25. You just buy a Blu-ray of it. But seeing that a Japanese film going down for $12, that's just like
usually the second release of it on DVD in Japan is like $40 or so. You know, $40 is not unusual, $60 is not unusual. So that was, you know, was quite good. And I've got a pretty good chunk of my stuff is live action movies that are available subtitled from Japan that have never been released here.
Okay.
You know, so I keep an eye on it. And the prices are creeping down. But then again, I remember the days when you wanted to buy on VHS a Japanese live action film, you would pay $75.
Oh, really?
Yes, because in the US the market was the rental market. It was not the individual buyer. So I remember, like, you know, going into the local stores and looking at the Japanese thing, you know, seeing all these great Zatoichi movies for $75 a piece. I said, no way can I afford that. And of course, they'd only released the first 14 Zatoichi movies. FanimeCon then licensed the rest of the series, $25 a piece. So all of these foreign film distributors in the US were starting to drop their price and starting to make more money because the fans were starting to buy more things. You know, so it was a similar phenomenon here, that the things were very expensive at one time. You know.
Crazy. Yeah.
And of course, in those days, a 2-episode VHS tape of a Japanese anime series was $35 for 2 episodes.
I remember, like, back when I cut VHS before, like for Pokemon, for example, like that would be $20 for like only 4 episodes.
Yeah.
And you're right, for the whole rental market part. We had Blockbuster back then.
At the same time that FanimeCon dropped the price of live action things, which they were just beginning to release, they also dropped the price of all their anime to $25. And my local comic book shop had a huge set of Urusei Yatsura, which I think at that time were like $65 for a 2-episode tape.
Wow.
And they just said, they put up a sign saying, in 1 month the price of these is coming down to $25. We're selling for $25 now. So I just looked at the owner and I said, I'm going to the bank and getting money. I'll take one of each, put them aside for me. So I walked out with a stack of VHS tapes like this, you know.
With Gundam celebrating its 40th year this year, what's your take on the evolution of the Gundam franchise from, say, the original Mobile Gundam in '79 to about the more recent releases, such as like Iron Blooded Orphans, etc.?
I'm primarily a fan of Universal Century Gundam. The original series was quite enjoyable. I've got both the entire series and the 3 movies. I always recommend to people watch the 3 movies because it encapsulates the story perfectly.
Not to mention they didn't complete the original series either.
Yeah, well, they finished it up, but they had to rush it. Yeah, but after it went into reruns, they discovered there was a big market for it. It's just that when they ran the original series, apparently the way they were gauging popularity is how well the toys sold. And the audience turned out to skew much older than they thought it would. And so the older audience was not interested in buying cheap toys made for grade schoolers and middle school kids. But the other series, the other Gundam series, tend to skew for a younger audience. So, you know, Gundam Wing is primarily aimed at a middle school audience rather than, you know, college age audience. And Universal Century Gundam shows have tended to be more high school and college age, though they're popular for a lot of younger people too, but they tend to skew older. So I'm a huge fan of those. Iron Blood Orphans, I enjoyed, and it was kind of interesting because it's one of those things where Bandai is doing a thing where they do half the series and then they get all this fan feedback about what the fans like, and then they make sure to emphasize that in the second half. So the second half got much darker.
Oh, yes.
And so I think if they had kept that same level of problematic things, that they could have had a more consistent series, but it shifted to a much darker tone with more deaths of characters and stuff. And I think that can be a problem because then you have a certain segment of the fan base then changing the creative model of the series. And so people who really enjoy the first half will not necessarily enjoy the second half as well. So that was the only non-Universal Century Gundam show I was ever really tempted to buy, and I'm not going to buy. You know. However, Gundam The Origin I greatly enjoyed.
Any thoughts on Unicorn?
Unicorn I greatly enjoyed. Yeah, all of the other Universal Century stuff I greatly enjoyed, including the 3D animation one, which is not the best animation, it's still got interesting stories and characters and stuff. And that's the crucial thing for me, is how good is the story? And Universal Century Gundam stuff tends to be pretty good.
It just expands so many different storylines. I mean, you talked about the original Mobile Suit Gundam, you go up to like MS-18, War in the Pocket, Star Wars Memory. I mean,
Well, face it, it involves all of humanity. So you've got an incredible range of story potential. You could be doing a story set with the occupation of Mexico by the Zeon forces. I mean, that shows up in the original series.
of course.
Because Amano Ray in the original series is from his hometown is just outside Tijuana. You know, so you've got all this great potential for all these stories that are not part of the main original story. They just are peripheral to the whole thing. So there's all this great, you could create all of these wartime dramas, you know, dealing with that. And so that's, I think, one of the strengths of it. You don't have to focus on the main characters.
Right. So I have one question to ask also. We have seen United States companies pick up making like projects for anime movies. Say for example, Ghost in the Shell, Dragon Ball Evolution, those kind of movies. And you know those movies were mediocre to bomb, like they didn't do well. There's a lot more projects coming up. How do you feel about how this is going? Why the United States companies have been like making these anime movies?
If they have respect for the original series and do a good job, I think they'll be popular with fans. And I think if they do it that way, it'll be popular with non-fans. I'm hearing really great things about Battle Angel Alita from fans, including fans that are incredibly hardcore of the original manga.
Yeah.
And, you know, yeah, there are things they don't like, but they're small things. You know?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
they would have done this a little bit differently or that a little bit differently. It would have been cool if they included that. But they're not going to reject it. And in fact, the Anime Nostalgia podcast, when they reviewed it, it was quite great because the first thing they did is they talked about their hopes for the show before they saw it. And then the second half of the program was after they saw it, what they liked, what they didn't like, what their recommendation was. And both reviewers were saying, I'm taking friends next week to see it. That's a sign they did something good. Never heard anything like that about the Ghost in the Shell movie. You know,
There have been some like mixed reviews about it.
I feel like the line was a little divided, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I liked it, but I could see where they were cutting corners to please the non-anime fans. And I could see parts where they did that.
Now, the new Lupin the Third movie, which the Hong Kong release has the Australian subtitles that are really good subtitles. And Hong Kong Blu-rays play on American players, just like Japanese Blu-rays play on American players. That one is a good adaptation. It very much feels like a classic Lupin film.
Okay.
You know, so that's well done. So, and in Japan, they can fail too.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
they
true.
can do something that's just not that good,
That's
or something it's okay, it's enjoyable, but I'm not going to watch it again, you know, type of thing. Like I say earlier, Wild 7, that was a great adaptation, and they took liberties from that. They changed some of the character profiles and stuff. You don't have a really fat hippie character, for example, but the character who plays that role does a good job and everything.
Yeah.
But you do have the Yakuza boss, you know, character, and the actor in that is a really good one. So, you know, if they do a good job, that's fine. I'm curious to see, you know, the City Hunter movie that came out of France.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
I
We also
mean,
have the new Mobile Suit Gundam adaptation that's coming out soon too.
so, you know, it depends if they have a respect and fidelity for the original.
And I feel like, you know, from the first time we saw like anime movies become, becoming into English kind of things, it started to be all really, really not well, but they started to grow up and actually make the films a little bit better, which is great.
Well, plus, you've got people now who are actual fans of the thing doing it.
Exactly.
And so, there's talk now about a live-action American Gundam movie. Let's see what they do.
Yeah.
You know.
Time check?
It is 11:47.
Okay, how many more minutes do we have?
Technically, you don't have anything until much later, so it's dependent on what you guys are allotted?
Yeah.
No, we have, okay.
I mean, I would say maybe 13 more minutes, see how that goes, because then you'll hit 12 o'clock.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can go like one more
Yeah,
question.
you're
One more
probably-
question.
It started,
Yeah.
it started at 11:30 anyway, so a full 30 minutes seems fine to me. If you're
Okay,
okay with the guy.
okay.
It's fine with us.
So back in 1990, you found Cal Anime Alpha at Cal. What was your favorite memory of that group?
Oh, the enthusiasm of the students, because, you know, I graduated like a decade before from UC. And just the enthusiasm of the students who were running the programs, who really loved it. The cultural mix. I mean, almost every member of the club was American, but a lot of them, their parents had come, like from the Philippines or from Taiwan, or they were Bay Area kids or LA area kids who happened to be in a city where they could watch subtitled anime on UHF TV. You know, we had like Captain Harlock on TV in the late 70s and early 80s here in the Bay Area. I had no TV, I had no idea, you know, until I went to see the Galaxy Express movie and that delightfully atrocious redub that Corman did. And when Harlock appears, the entire theater erupted in applause and yelling. And I said, okay, this is a significant character. And so that was a big thing for me. And for me, I worked right next to the campus. So every Monday night, it was easy to meet up with my buddy, have dinner, and walk over and see Cal Anime. But to me, what really impressed me, besides the fact that I was constantly impressed with the anime, and because it was such a different thing, coming out of being a movie geek, was the enthusiasm and the knowledge of the students. Mm-hmm. And chatting with a lot of them, it's like they had been introduced to anime by either watching it on UHF channels or their relatives talking to them, you know, when they were visiting, or sending them VHS tapes, you know, and stuff like that. And of course, back then, VHS anime, pretty much, with a couple of exceptions, was largely unsubtitled. So, and in fan circles, every time you copied a VHS tape, it degraded. So some of the things we watched were no subtitles, with the colors turning to brown and smeared.
Oh my
Oh.
And we had a 2-page handout, which a description of the characters on one side of the handout, and the other side of the handout, the plot outline for what we were going to watch. And we had to look at that before the lights went out. And I remember explaining to a guy, the lights are going to go out, you're not going to be able to read that. Memorize all this stuff, and we'll talk afterwards. Because this guy was like all excited, it was his first time there. And forget projectors, forget big screens. These were TV monitors.
Oh, Lord.
4 TV monitors in a room that sat 140 people.
Oh.
You know, and you just looked at these TV. And it was the coolest thing in the world because it was the only way you could get it. You couldn't get it any other way. I mean, I could go to Japantown and I could buy a VHS tape from Japan that would cost $50, $60. And, you know, I could, you know, buy it. I'd have to buy VCRs. Now, a few years after that, walk down to the neighborhood video shop, bought a video shop in downtown Berkeley on the way home from work, go in, pick up a bunch of things. One time I walked in there and I asked him about some Hong Kong movies, and the guy says, we don't really know Hong Kong movies. Would you be willing to look at a catalog? So he hands me a catalog, and I say, well, I'll mark off what I know is good. And I just marked off about 40 titles, and he says, this is cool. And I get in there a few weeks later, they've gotten 120 different titles.
Oh my.
They just ordered the entire catalog. They said to hell with it. And half of them are already rented out. We're talking like 93 or so. Hong Kong cinema was just hitting the American market. And they started stocking massive amounts of anime. So of course I had to, you know, eventually I ended up, you know, buying more. And I was using my housemate's TV. And when she moved out, she left the TV with me because she didn't want it. Her sister had bought it for her because her sister was shocked that she didn't have a TV. You know? So when that set died, I had to buy a new TV. When that one died, I had to buy my new giant monster flat screen thing, which now you can buy for a fraction of the cost.
So we're at the 25th anniversary of Fanime. How do you think the next 25 years is going to go?
That's interesting. We're at an interesting point in fandom because a few years ago, if you came to Fanime, the attendees skewed much younger. We've still got as many young attendees, but we're getting more older attendees. There's more people sticking with it, people returning to anime. And so it's a great age mix. The titles that are coming out are quite the mix. The number of anime conventions in America has dramatically increased. There are hundreds of them. There are multiple ones every single weekend except in the middle of winter, you know, and that needs to be rectified. You know, so, and the market is growing. We have more anime now than ever been available. We have all the streaming. More people are getting casually exposed to it because they got a Netflix account. They wouldn't give a hoot about Crunchyroll, but they got Netflix, they got Amazon. They go, what's this cartoon thing here, you know?
Also, Netflix has like their own original like anime series, so technically they actually have the licensing to actually air the show on Netflix
they put in
now.
production money, or they got an exclusive license.
Exactly.
You know, a lot of the Netflix originals, they were not involved in production,
No,
but
but
they're the original broadcaster here,
Yeah.
type of thing. The disadvantage of that is those people are going to do what they can to keep it from getting released on disc because they want people to subscribe to watch it on their system. So if that may, there's no evidence yet, that may slow down disc releases for some titles, but other titles are coming out. There are plenty of shows that are not getting disc release, you know, I wish would. Maybe they will in the future. It's great to see older shows all of a sudden streaming. Kimigure and Rogue is now on Crunchyroll.
That's right.
You know, I mean, I bought the Blu-ray. You know, my box of DVDs was this big. The Blu-ray's like this. You know?
I was also thinking like, is everything gonna go digital? Like it feels like everything's gonna go digital. Not really necessary for physical copies of discs anymore. But I just feel like the money right now is going to be in digital releases.
Streaming is a big thing, but
Yeah.
you still need physical media because streaming contracts end.
Okay.
You
Makes
know,
sense,
so
yeah.
Rose of Versailles, you cannot stream right now. You had to have bought the thing.
Okay.
You know,
So
and that is such a
that's-
classic show.
So say for example, you want to have your nostalgia factor back. Let's say you want to watch like Lucky Star back, but it's not on a certain channel or a certain like streaming website.
Right, and on another media, manga. We're getting tons of
That's
great
right,
manga
yeah.
now. And there's more josei and seinen manga coming out. And there's incredible manga that's only available as ebooks. You know, so one of my favorites, which is from a company that's way below the radar, people just don't really know about these things, is a manga called Sota's Knife, about a young chef. And it's not like this exaggerated food competition thing. No, he is a young chef perfecting his skills working in a restaurant in Tokyo. And how he's learning different cuisines and different techniques and everything, and his relationship with his co-workers. And it's also cool because I've been in that neighborhood and I see so many landmarks that I'm familiar with, you know, including like little tiny things, you know, and there are things in the manga that I've never seen, like, oh, I gotta find out where that is and go check it out. But very good thing, you know. And Sota's Knife is like 41 volumes in Japanese, 39 volumes currently available. 200 and something pages per volume for $4 each.
Wow.
So it's a really good price.
Yeah.
Sato Productions has a bunch of things that have been released in the US. So if you're like a Gogol 13 fan, there's his Doll, which is about a hotel detective. He's got several other titles, and they're short series. They're not monster things like Gogol 13 was. And he's even got some like supernatural Ultraman type things. So there's a lot of different stuff out there. And so digital publishing is a handy thing. And Kodansha is now releasing titles digitally first, and if they do well, they release in print. You know.
Okay.
And then, of course, the advantage of digital is you buy it, you own it, but it doesn't take physical space, which is really good, because I've got over 250 digital volumes.
I would imagine a lot of physical space if you print the manga out like that. So yeah.
And I've got like 24 boxes of manga that don't fit on my shelves.
Exactly. Yeah, you're gonna have like stacks loads of shelves full of manga.
Right.
While you can actually all have it in one like tablet, for example.
And with me, when I write, And if I'm gonna say in such and such a manga this happens, I need to grab the damn volume and look at it to make sure my memory's correct. You know, so I know exactly where each volume is in which box. But, you know, it takes up a lot of physical room. But it's also a way for companies to release things digitally first as a way of testing the market to see if there's an interest. And then we're getting things that, you know, we had wanted for a long time, like Saint Holy Men, about Jesus and Buddha as roommates.
Yes, I've been hearing about the anime. It's great. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah. And the first volume of the manga is out in English. It's really funny. It's quite touching in ways also. Buddha discovers Tezuka's manga, Buddha, and becomes totally hooked on it, and becomes a Tezuka fan. I have at home a one-sheet, double-sided guide to their neighborhood in English.
Oh, wow.
That came out while the manga was coming out in Japanese. I'm going to be contacting that tourism office. I have to find it, because when I go to Tokyo, I pick up lots of ephemera like that, and I put it in document cases, like via Daiso. And so each document case is from a different trip to Japan. And I have to find that one, so I can email them and saying, the manga's just coming out in English. You might want to reprint this and get it back in the tourism office.
Last question, guys. At least final thoughts.
Final thoughts is, you know, I'm glad to be back here at Fanime. I think for yourself and everyone here, we all love coming to Fanime. It's a really good con, and hopefully we can continue to be here for another 25 years. I'd love to be coming here when I'm 55.
Wow, 55.
Yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
You know, 25 years, I'll have my walker. I'll be
You know, for me though, I mean, like for Fanime, I've been going here for 10 straight years ever since I've heard about it in 2009, and it's been a blast ever since. I've been loving how the anime community is and how awesome the people are, and I hope for the next 25 years coming up that it will continue on and continue the trend and everything.
Yeah, definitely. I'm agreeing with this guy. I mean, especially like I've been doing it for like 10 years on and off. I mean, circumstances, but primarily it's fun to hear like all the different stories, or at least all the different little opinions. Like right before we got into our hotel, or at least we were with a Lyft driver, he said like, I really love you guys, like being around, not just because I'm making more money, but it's just you guys are always a bucket full of smiles. It just makes my day. It's like, it just like when I actually looked at an aspect board yesterday, just looking around, like everyone's like having a good time, and like that's one thing I really like about the anime. Like it's just community. It's just there's just so much love for everything out there.
Well, see, I live up in Oakland, so for Fanime to get me down here, they just send a driver up to pick me up. It's not a regular staff person; they hire from a company.
It's amazing. You hire somebody from Fanime to come and pick you up, and then they'll drive you down.
I get a limo pulling it.
That is so crazy.
And one time, the only limo available was a stretch limo. So my neighbors were like, why the hell are you getting picked up by a stretch limo? But anyway, the driver this time, he said 2 of his kids are on staff.
Oh!
It's the first time I've had a driver who knew what the hell that was. 2 of his kids are on staff. And he talks about his daughter going, you know, Dad, can you take me to Japantown? I want to go to the Baby the Starshine Pride and buy some clothes.
Yeah, that's a good taste. That's a good taste, you're right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Yep. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you. How's lunchtime?